Hello, Innovation Challenge hackers. Welcome to Dev Radio. And I am here with Bryce Johnson, who's been good enough to take some time on a beautiful Seattle afternoon, it looks like.
Yeah, it's lovely here in the Redmond campus. I'm outside the Microsoft Inclusive Tech Lab, which is a facility that we have here at Microsoft, so that we can bring the disabled community in to help us develop products.
I think they, I think whenever anyone says Bryce Johnson, they always say the Xbox Adaptive Controller.
It is a wonderful legacy to have. I will take it.
You've made life more fun for many people.
Yeah.
Tell us, just tell us a little bit more about the lab and what you, how you work and what you do.
The lab was started as we were developing the adaptive controller with the realization that not only do we have to have people with disabilities come in and help us, give us their life experience so that we can properly sort of empower them to do more. But we also, needed a place where our engineers and our designers could go to kind of be immersed in disability, right? Because, we all have our own sort of worlds and ways of thinking. And so, we started before the pandemic, but over the pandemic, we kept it afloat. We retooled, we redid the lab, and we've been back a couple years. We've hosted over 20,000 people to kind of come through the lab and sort of see how we do inclusive design. But the core of what we do here is to bring in the disability community. And the reason why I'm outside the lab today is we actually have a team from Windows in there right now working on an inclusive design sprint. Nice.
Well, tell us, so when we connected, it was around this idea of supported employment. And I'll be transparent, it took me a couple times to kind of get my head around what it is. So why don't you tell us about it?
I think it's something I'm really, really passionate about. Microsoft has a wonderful supported employment program. We lean into that community really there. But supported employment is an employment strategy that is typically government supported. It happens in multiple countries around the world. And it's typically for what they would call people with intellectual or developmental disabilities who have a hard time getting work. So their employment coaching and sponsorship is supported by the government. And then employers basically get disabled talent. I will guarantee you that everyone has interacted with a supported employee at some point or another. If you've ever met, say, someone with Down syndrome working in a Walmart, that's a supported employee.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the first scenarios I thought of. And when I started looking into this and trying to figure it out, my heart and my thoughts went out to the people that do the support.
Yeah.
The coaches. What in your mind, like, what's a typical day in the life for one of these folks?
So a lot of the coaches have these dual roles, and sometimes they'll talk about being developers and coaches. So the developer part of their job, the job developer part, is basically understanding an individual and their skills and what they want to do and what they're sort of able to do, and matching them with a job out in the community, right? And then the coaching part is once they get that job, like helping them basically integrate into that job, do that job every day, support them and grow, and ultimately coach them to a place where they don't actually need to be there anymore, where the job coach fades from the person's life and they are independent and are employed.
What kind of caseload or do these folks carry? How many people are they taking care of typically, if there is any typical number?
Yeah, well, I think it does vary. I've heard I've heard large caseloads being described to be as 14, and then I've heard some people go, "Oh, I have 50." So it is wild, kind of all over the place. And I guess it would just certainly depend on the individual, but I do think that the common thing across all these all these cases is the fact that there's a lot of redundant paperwork that's involved in a government facilitated sort of job, a job sort of project that could be optimized by what we are doing with AI. And so what that would do is that would actually free up the job coach's time, in theory, to do less paperwork and kind of focus more on actually supporting the people that they coach, right? And I think it's a wonderful kind of opportunity for us to dig into, because, the one thing I will also tell you is that in the US, these numbers are kind of off the top of my head, but there's about 1.7 million people who are supported through by the government to do supported employment, but the potential market that the US is believed to have is up to 7 million employees. So it's really a wonderful sector, because when we think about people with disabilities being employed, we can't really point to a sector, and supported employment is a sector.
Interesting. I love the idea of, taking away the drudgery of paperwork so that they can do the real job. Um, the what when you mention paperwork, it's
Yeah.
are these just filling out a lot of forms for the government? For what's kind of the flow that they have to accommodate with all the communication and bureaucracy? It's important to track it, I'm sure. Yeah.
For sure. And
Yeah.
I think you're right. Like in any kind of bureaucracy, we hear. So here's an example that I've heard from a number. I interviewed a few dozen job coaches, to kind of over the years to kind of understand this space. And there's a lot of like, well, I need to make notes for my colleagues in case like I phone in sick one day,
Yeah.
and then so that someone can help pick up the thing. But then I'm also writing a report for a government agency, and then I'm writing a report on like this person for something else. So it feels like there's a lot of redundant report writing.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
And the reporting is probably, here's the situation we've got, here's the person, here's what we're doing, here's how they're coming along.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So
And I think,
yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's even more like there's other interesting things that I think our AI tools can help job coaches be more efficient even with their own people. When you're breaking down tasks for someone with an intellectual disability, you have to be really detailed. You can't just kind of go fold the pizza boxes, right? You have to kind of go, this is how you fold pizza boxes, this is where they're stored, this is like. And so that I know that having tried this a lot, that is something that AI is really good at doing, which is breaking down tasks. There's these really wonderful, I just found out about these things. They're called Goblin tools. And the URL is goblin.tools. And there's a thing there called the magic to-do list. And what it does is you give it a task and then you say, hey, break down what this is. And you can go in and have it break down tasks into really detailed. And having this personalized for someone and all this is a really wonderful opportunity.
How did you find Goblin tools?
I work a ton with the neurodiverse community, right? Like there were some folks that kind of came in from a local university, which is the Washington State University. They have a program called ROAR, which is a program for people with intellectual disabilities to go to college, live independently, like away from their house. It's a way to kind of transition them into adulthood. And they came in last week, showed me Goblin tools. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Right. It's wild.
How I'm really interested in how, people with sort of specialized focuses share information with each other.
Yeah.
When you're a job coach, you're clearly not on an island. There's got to be some community of these folks engaging with each other. How are they typically sharing information today, like best practices and,
I think largely
like
it's word of mouth, really.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the challenges. Like, so when an individual, job coaching isn't necessarily a lucrative position. It's something you do because you feel strongly about making a difference in the world. So when people inevitably leave, there's a lot of turnover in that industry. sometimes a lot of tribal knowledge can be lost,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
know, because, you know, this person had contacts at the local Safeway, you know, now we have new people that kind of, we will need to develop that.
Yeah. Interesting. So it's, I mean, it's a, it's a complicated role. I mean, you're doing business development with like the local Safeway and employers, and you're,
Yep.
following up on the cases that you've got where you've got to, take care of them. And I'm sure there's
Yep.
families involved who are very emotional, for
Yeah.
good reason,
Hmm.
that need to feel that things are okay and being taken care of. And
Yeah.
um, just my heart goes out to these people. I want AI to make it better, you know?
Oh, kicked my mic there. Uh, yeah, no, absolutely. And I do believe that AI can make it better. And you're right. It is, you know, all of our lives are entangled, right? So a
Yeah.
job coach is talking to, um, the person that they coach is family. They're talking to the manager at the employer, because the thing is the job coach isn't the manager, right?
No,
And so,
no.
you have someone who's at an employer, and they're the ones that are actually managing these folks, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is still a nuance that's sometimes hard to wrap your head around, just how many people are involved.
The what does, I've just got a couple more questions for you because I said I'd
Yeah,
only take about 15 minutes of your time or so today. Um, like, what does success look like? Like if we're doing this in Star Wars,
sure.
how would it look?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, success is a workforce, and a workforce that is inclusive of people of all abilities.
Yeah.
So understanding that, I think one of the things that happened, and I don't have any hardcore data to, other than the employment data that is published by the Department of Labor.
Yeah.
Over the pandemic, people with disabilities lost jobs more than their non-disabled peers, but they rebounded much faster than their non-disabled peers. And I think part of the reason is, if we all remember over the pandemic how hard it was for people to find employees, you had a
Yeah.
series of employers that were open to hiring people, right, that they might
Yeah.
not have hired before. And so it's an interesting opportunity for us, I think, as we think about our work at Microsoft to empower people,
Yeah.
to how do we think about, what we do to sort of create independent work in a community that hasn't always had a lot, and the multitude of ways that technology can support them. I will say, since working with this community, it is largely the sweat of the people who work in that community, right? Like, everything is, because you will see job coaches where their entire documentation system, you have local agencies that have like these robust sort of ISV solutions, and
Mhm.
that are basically like, any other type of employment system, to mom and pop shops that are running everything off of legal pads in the front seat of their car,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Um, Folks, let me know in the chat if you've got any questions for Bryce. Otherwise, if you post them to the hackathon discussion board, I'll follow up with him. If we need a subject matter expert to coach us as we build some epic stuff. But the chat's looking pretty quiet. I think that the audience size has been consistent the whole time, so they've been paying attention. They're just,
Yeah,
you need to soak it in. Yeah.
sure. I mean, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate the opportunity. This is something that I think is I was shocked as I dug into this community, just how big it was, and how, um, expansive it is. And it's something that and as someone who's been involved in disabled empowerment for over a decade, finding out about this community and really digging in a couple of years ago was really eye-opening for me.
Yeah. Well, let's change it. Let's just make it
Yeah,
better. Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. Thanks a ton, Bryce. Um, you've educated me, and I can't wait to see what people build.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. Thank you so much.
well, take care.